Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and gender nonconforming individuals to another episode of the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Thursday, October 17th, 2024. Thank you so much for joining me. We only have 19 days before the next election and 19 days to stop this Maga takeover of democracy. I know it's been a few days since we've had a chance to speak, and I realize I've been doing so much work out here, and I haven't even been sharing it all through the podcast format. There are a lot of videos that I've been putting out with the Really American family. Go to Really American on YouTube and Facebook or wherever you find them, and you'll see a whole host of videos that I've done with them. I want to share several of them with you in this podcast today because I talk about the same issues. Clearly, there are issues that we must address. We absolutely have to close out this election. And I know there's so many things that are happening around the globe. There are so many horrible things that are happening around the globe. There are so many horrible things that's happening to us as a population, as a species. And I honestly, I don't know now whether or not I'm going to just share the clips that I did earlier, because as I sit here and I really think about what's going on, I'm at a loss of words for how cruel humanity can really be. I often think about this as a pastor. Who needs a devil when you have humans creating literal hell on earth for so many people? You know, I want to talk about the election, and I will, and I encourage you to make sure that you go vote and make sure everyone in your household that's eligible to vote, make sure they vote. But I pause for a second and I recall what's happening around the globe. What's happening in Gaza? What's happening in Ukraine? What's happening in the Sudan? What's happening in the Congo? What's happening in Yemen? What's happening in so many nations? I am appalled. And that's not even, that word doesn't even capture it. Disgusted doesn't capture it. Taken aback doesn't capture it. But I am sick to my stomach when I think about all that is actually happening to people on this planet. The cruelty that so many people experience. The willingness and the giddiness with which people are cruel to others. That's what's driving so much of what's happening right now. What's driving Maga is the cruelty. What's driving Benjamin Netanyahu is the cruelty. What's driving so much of the hatred, what's driving Vladimir Putin is the cruelty, the ambition for power. Same across the board. It's ambition, it's power, and it's just a lust for cruelty. And there is a level of suffering on this planet right now that harkens back to darker times in history. We are living in a dark period of world history. And it's almost like these ebbs and flows. There's a cycle of periods of global chaos and global cruelty. And then we have a lull. We have a period, a brief period where perhaps there's not as much cruelty, but there's still cruelty. And there's never been a time on this planet where we have had no cruelty. And as a pastor, again, I pray about this thing because, you know, I'm a faith, but I'm an action guy. I'm a faith with works. I'm not just going to give you thoughts and prayers. If there's something I can do, I'm going to go out there and try to do it. And so as I pray about these things and I analyze these things, a question comes back to my mind over and over and over again. How many people on this planet are living in literal hell? Who needs a fire and brimstone hell when a 20-year-old young Palestinian boy burned alive, young man burned alive in his hospital bed in Gaza after another hospital was struck by Benjamin Netanyahu and his Likud party and the Zionists who have control over Israel and control over the United States for that matter? Who needs a fire and brimstone hell and a devil with a pitchfork when you have Vladimir Putin expanding his imperialism and now bombing neighborhoods indiscriminately in Ukraine? Who needs a literal hell when you have children in the Congo who know nothing but suffering, have not understood what it is to sleep in a comfortable bed and to have a decent meal, but their entire existence from birth to the grave is for the subjugation, or rather for the capitalization, for money, for the exploitation of the lithium mines there and all of the other rare resources that are there so that we can have our cell phones. Who needs a hell with a devil and a pitchfork when we have Maga preparing to deport millions of people because they don't like immigrants and they need you to be afraid of them so that they can have something to campaign on because they have nothing else to campaign on? Who needs a literal fire and brimstone hell when we are progressively getting there here on this planet with the total amount of suffering that's on this planet? I wrestle with some of these questions about whether or not we're living in hell. You know, it's not a question that you normally would ask as a Christian, because our belief is that we're living on earth and then we're going to die and either go to heaven or go to hell. That's the general paradigm that we believe in. But when I look at the suffering on this planet, who the hell needs hell when we have hell on earth? And then if we're living on, if this is a literal hell that we're living in, a cycle, an endless loop of having hope for something more and then having that hope taken away by cruel people, then it dawned on me that I can't blame God for this when I see the people who are literally doing it. I can see the policies that are causing it. I can see the greed that is causing it. I can see the ambition and the desire for power that's causing it. This is a hell of our own creation. Here I was thinking I was going to talk about the election. This is a hell of our own creation, and we're only making it worse. Why? So they can own the libs, so that they can keep their quarterly profit margins, so that they can not worry about a peaceful transfer of power and they can just lock down a theocracy for the rest of the time that American empire exists. What? Who needs a hell when they're planning to execute women publicly? That's a clip I'm going to play for you later. Pastor Joel Webbon, a Maga pastor, a Christian nationalist pastor, literally advocating for the public execution of women who have the nerve to report a sexual assault. And he's going to say, if they lie about sexual assault, we already know how that's going to play out. Who needs a literal devil and a pitchfork when we have all of these little demons running around here using their social media, using their political power, using their military forces, using their money and their wealth to generate enough hell on earth for us to never think about a hell in the afterlife? Folks, I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that. I don't even know. I'm quite honestly still just processing that with something that dropped in my spirit over the last 3 days. And as I'm talking about it with you, I almost want to apologize for proposing that question to you, for positing that idea and putting that seed into your mind. But I'm sure some of you have looked around and thought about it yourself, like, what the hell is this hell that we're living in? And I listen, I say that from a position of privilege, sitting comfortably in the empire. My children, even though we're still trying to survive this pandemic that everyone is pretending doesn't exist, I just have to compartmentalize that and put that on the side and trying to make sure my kids don't catch COVID every 3 months, right? But outside of that, and oh, by the way, not to mention climate change and the hurricanes, 2 hurricanes back to back that were devastating. And it's only going to get worse next summer. But I'm going to put those 2 by the side because everything else in this country and this living in this empire puts us in a position of privilege. We don't know what hell is. Not in America. Not if you're housed. Not if you have a home and you have a place to sleep and you have enough food. Maybe you're not full, but you have enough food to just survive. That's actually a position of privilege. When we compare ourselves to the global order, heck, when we compare ourselves to what some of our unhoused brothers and sisters are living through. So I say this from a position of privilege, and I also say this from a position of fear, of not fear, because God has not given us a spirit of fear, but just downright concern. Trepidation, I'm just so bothered about the potential of our future in the hands of some of the very people who call themselves Christian. The future does not look bright because of their Christianity. It's a shame when we can point directly to the devil that is operating in this hell in which so many people live on this planet, and we can trace the roots back to their proclamation of Christianity. Or whatever their religion is that they want to use as a justification for nationalism, whether it's Zionism, whether it's Islamic nationalism. It's either religious or ethnic nationalism, and it's certainly the greed of capitalism that drives this hell that people are born into and die in every single day without even so much as hope. All right. Sorry, that was in me, and I guess I just had to get it out. When we come back, I want to play for you this clip of Pastor Joel Webbon, who is calling for the public execution of women who would make quote unquote false accusations of sexual assault. We already know how that plays out because they will make every woman who ever accuses anyone out to be a liar. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show after this.
I'm in sync with the earth, 10 toes deep, flower child from the turf. I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'm a ride for the squad, let her ties in the hearse. I've been on the vibe, kinda hard to describe. I'm in between, I'm good and it's fine, but I'm tired of the grind. Then I come alive in the night to realize I'm in the middle of the time of my life. I never so packed for the stack, never lied on the rap, got a bag from the way that I write it. Queen looking Tyson.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
I need you to pause what you're doing and watch this video clip from Pastor Joel Webbon, who is a Christian nationalist MAGA pastor. He is advocating for the public execution of women who he says, quote unquote, make false allegations of sexual assault. He creates this conditional to enter this conversation about publicly executing women into the public discourse. And he does it in the pulpit. Take a listen in.
And if that were to occur and the just penalties were to be enforced, you, the false accuser, is now put to death, and that's a public death. It's a public sentence, publicly carried out. Then the citizens of these United States of America, you know what they would do? Hashtag Me Too would end real fast. How do you, false accusing? Playing the victim when you're actually not? Like, you know how to end that real fast? All you have to do is publicly execute a few women who have lied.
Now, before I get into the nuances of this, the theological and the logical fallacies here, and the downright nationalism and the authoritarianism behind it, I've got to ask Joel Webbon, what is wrong with you? No, for real. What is wrong with you, my guy? Now, I've been tracking this guy, Joel Webbon, for a minute. He hates me. He has me blocked on Twitter. It's so funny that a person who is bold enough to advocate publicly for the public execution of women is terrified of little old me. Why won't you debate your theology with me? But you're bad enough to call for the public execution. What is wrong with you? What did your mother assault you? Did a group of girls drag Joel Webbon out to the playground and curb stomp him during recess? Like, what is actually wrong with these people? They hate women so much. At the core of them, they cannot stand the fact that a woman has the nerve to speak up about something that happened to her. Because let's be real. This conditional that he sets, and I've already had people on Twitter say, oh, well, it is a sin to bear false witness against your neighbor. First of all, let's get down to it. How many women do not report sexual assault? How many women are terrified of reporting it right now today? And that's in a system that doesn't execute you. And so what this is, and it's very clear because he said it at the end of the clip there, this is nothing more than to put a muzzle, a silencer on every woman in this country. And Joel knows it. And he's doing it from the pulpit, which is anathema to me. But how many times have we seen through history how the words of pastors and priests and bishops cause death and destruction? And it's coming back into vogue, right? There's an entire movement now that's aligned with Joel Webbon and Maga and Christian nationalism that wants to go back to the time when women were silent. In fact, Joel Webbon, in this next clip, this is Joel Webbon advocating for the abolition of the 19th Amendment because he does not believe women should have the right to vote. And I want you to keep in mind, this is one of the top influencers in MAGA spaces. This is a type of person that is coming into power with Donald Trump if we don't stop him.
And just for the record, I think the 19th Amendment should be repealed. I think that because, well, first and foremost, because I'm a Christian, and that is the Christian position. Oh my gosh, you're saying that? Yes, that is the Christian position, is that households should not be divided against one another. So it's not just elevating a male vote, but it's elevating the household vote by repealing the 19th Amendment. Just for the record, it's not just trying to take away a female vote, but it's trying to say, no, there's a family vote. Right. There's a household. And it's like, well, where do women get their voice? Where women get their voice is from their father, from their husband. If they're not married, it's from their father. If they're not married and their father is dead, it's from their brother, it's from their uncle, it's the men in their lives that love them.
So again, Joel, what happened? What woman hurt you so badly that you've committed your entire being, your entire life, your entire persona, your professional career, your public branding? What woman did something so terrible to you that your entire life has been dedicated to the subjugation and the oppression of women, and now you're calling for the public execution of those you say would lie about sexual assault, when we know that most sexual assault does not go reported because of fear of the system as it is now? And Joel, just like I know that the purpose of this is to cut it off completely so that men like you, men who are intimidated by women, men who are terrified of women like Kamala Harris, men who could never sit and hold a conversation or maintain a healthy relationship with a woman who is equally as powerful as you. You can't do that. And what you want to do is fundamentally change society where women have no voice anymore because you can't force them to do what you want. And before I get into the ad hominems, let's go to because there's plenty to lay at his feet. Let's go to the theological problem here. He might be in a pulpit and he calls himself a pastor, but he's not preaching Christ. He's preaching Christian nationalism. He's preaching patriarchy. Because how many times in the Bible did Jesus come to the aid of women in very specific cases where otherwise that woman would have been executed? several times. The Gospel of John, chapter 8, verses 1 through 11, Jesus is confronted by the religious leaders of the day, asking him about stoning a woman who was caught in the act of adultery. And what did Jesus do? Said, he who is without sin, cast the first stone. What you're preaching, Joel Webbon, is not Christ-like. It is most certainly Christian nationalist-like, but it's not Jesus. A second example, John chapter 4, verses 1 through 42. You have the story of the woman, the Samaritan woman at the well, who was an outcast, but Jesus showed her respect, dignity, and compassion amongst everything else that he did in that encounter. Time after time, the Jesus in the very same Bible that you profess to read, Joel Webbon, has made it clear that the dignity and the advancement of women is a priority to the kingdom of God. But here you are in your pompous and pious position as a pastor in Christian nationalism, advocating for the execution, the public execution of a woman who you will label and say she's lying on that man. We all know the power of this Maga misinformation machine and their ability to turn lies into action. And so if any woman ever accuses someone of sexual assault, again, all they have to do is ask Maga to turn that into a lie. And there you go, Joel. You have your public execution. Again, I've got to ask, what happened to you? Who did this to you? Were you turned down in college in such an embarrassing fashion that you decided to make your entire life about the subjugation and the oppression of women? What could possibly have happened to you? Or is this nothing more than a career move because you know that there are hundreds of thousands of angry men around this country who hate women so much that they would absolutely go along with your recommendation? Enough about Joel Webbon, but you need to unblock me, coward, so you can talk about this theology that you're promoting with me. Let's talk theologically about what you believe, because you're not standing on theological principles. You're standing on Christian nationalism. And this is why I'm very clear, and I'm very clear-eyed about something. Maga and Christian nationalism represents the system of the Antichrist. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. No, he's too much of a bumbling buffoon to be the Antichrist. But the Maga misinformation machine that surrounds him, the desire of Christian nationalism and their goals and their agenda for this planet is absolutely antithetical to Christ. Look at how they treat immigrants. It's exactly opposite of what Christ in the Bible said do. Look at how they want to treat women. The exact opposite of what Christ said do. They are anti-Christ. They live and thrive off of lies. Everything that they regurgitate, everything that they retweet and recycle is a bed of lies. And if we allow them to get into power, they will cement into a structure, a Christian nationalist system that will give people like Joel Webbon the ability to execute women publicly that he thinks is lying about sexual assault. The absurdity of it all. So what do we need to do? I need you to share this video with every single person who is voting for Maga. And I want you to ask them if they support this. I want you to ask your neighbor. I want you to ask your family member. I want you to ask the men in your life. Do you support this? Because if they support the idea of public execution of women under any circumstances, right? Then that's a person that you don't need to have in your life, number one. Then number two, go to the next person. Go to the next person and ask them the same question. And you need to convince people, every person that you can over the next 19 days, of why we must absolutely stop this Christian nationalist movement that is Maga, that is Donald Trump, that is J.D. Vance, and that is people like Joel Webbon, who wants to be big and bad enough and bold enough to execute women in the public square. But he's so afraid of me that he has me blocked on Twitter. Unblock me, you coward, and stand behind your false doctrine. Stand behind your antichrist message. Stand behind this Maga theology. And we'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show right after this.
Look, I'm in line with the stars, I'm in sync with the earth. 10 toes deep, flower child from the turf. I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'm a ride for the squad, ladder ties in the hearse. I've been on the vibe, kinda hard to describe. I'm in between, I'm good and it's fine, but I'm tired of the grind. Then I come alive in the night to realize I'm in the middle of the time of my life. I never so packed for the stack, never lied on the rap, got a bag from the way that I write it. Queen looking Tyson.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
I want you to take a look at this portion of the interview between Bret Baier and Kamala Harris. It is, I believe, a masterclass in two things. Number one, what Fox News is. They are a disinformation machine. They are the leading purveyors of disinformation. And you will see this in this clip. You'll see even with the framing of the question posed by Bret Baier. And when he didn't like how Vice President Harris was answering, he tried to load it up. You're going to see that. And I want you to make sure you take note of that. The other thing is that you're going to see in this clip is you're going to see Fox News lying to their audience in real time. And I know that portion isn't breaking news. We know that is what Fox News has been put on this planet to do. And this is the same reason they lost $1 billion in their lawsuit with Dominion voting systems. But to see it and then see it immediately fact checked with a level of intensity from Kamala Harris that shows how ferocious she really is. And I mean that in the highest respect as a compliment, because when you're dealing with people who will lie to you in your face, as well as lie to the entire American body politic, you have to have a backbone of steel. And one thing I can tell you, when you watch this clip, Kamala Harris has a backbone made of titanium.
If he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States, why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What
God,
is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish. Okay,
the intensity is coming from Kamala Harris in one moment, but I need us to pause and look at this part. Look at how he phrased this question. He's looking for a gotcha moment. He's looking for a clickbait moment. And when Kamala Harris did not take the bait, Bret Baier even tried to add on to it. He tried to put words in her mouth to see if he could get her to call the American people stupid. Listen, if I was in the interview, I would say that they were totally misguided. And I would say that they're misguided by Fox News. But that's why I'm not in the interview. Kamala Harris is demonstrating a level of discipline that I don't think most politicians can do. I don't think most people can do when they're in these intense moments with someone trying to set them up and someone lying to their faces. She's not only able to maintain her composure, but she's able to keep a laser focus. She's able to keep a laser-like focus on the question and the issue at hand. And so for Bret Baier to try to do this and put the word stupid or call them ignorant and put that in her mouth, it really is a desperate attempt at a clickable moment. It is certainly not journalism, but that's par for the course for Fox News. Let's keep listening.
The American people, he's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Now, I have to pause it right here. Vice President Kamala Harris is starting to heat up, and she's absolutely going to torch Bret Baier, Fox News, and Donald Trump in one moment. But before we get to that part, I need you to consider what's going on right here. You are seeing in real time the level of disinformation that is intentional from Fox News. It is not a mistake. This is not an editorial mistake. What's going on in this clip is Fox News doing the work for Donald Trump, which is to undermine the statements of Kamala Harris in real time as she is making it clear and repeating what Donald Trump himself said. Fox News has to block that thought from entering into the mind of Fox News viewers. And so what do? they played a soundbite that truncated, literally took off the portions of what Donald Trump said that absolutely mirrored and matched word for word what Kamala Harris accused him of. Chris Hayes actually did a wonderful segment on this. I want to play it for you here before we continue.
Bear just used a soundbite to try to clear Donald Trump of saying a thing in which he cut out the part where he says it. Watch.
It is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff because they made up the Russia hoax. It took 2 years to solve the problem. Absolutely nothing was done wrong, et cetera, et cetera. They're dangerous for our country. We have China, we have Russia, we have all these countries. If you have a smart president, they can all be handled. The more difficult are, the Pelosi's, these people, they're so sick and they're so evil. If they would spend their time trying to make America great again, it would be so easy to make this country great. But when I heard about that, they were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. But think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
All right.
They're the threat to democracy.
You see what they did there? On their own network. Like we have recording equipment here at 30 Rock, a lot of other places where we can just grab that. So he repeated, they are the enemy within. They're sick people. They're evil. He repeated it. And then Brett Baer's like, let me play you what he said today. He just cut out the big chunk.
And what's more is that the context, this video that he's showing, it's a Fox News program. And so Brett Baer and Fox News editors literally do not care that some of their audience members who watched the interview with Donald Trump yesterday would forget or not care that Fox News has now edited out that portion. In other words, Fox News is demonstrating that they have always been able to tell people to not believe their lying eyes. Don't believe your lying ears. Only believe how Fox News edits it. And I'm so glad that Vice President Kamala Harris ripped into them over this. Listen in.
It was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you.
That was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that. And here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times. And you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the president of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes.
And there he is at the very end, Brett Baer, doing the very last thing that he can to help protect Donald Trump from the truth of what Donald Trump is and what Donald Trump wants to do. He dismisses this and says that this is in the book of Bob Woodward. This is not just in the book of Bob Woodward. This is what Mark Milley said out of his own mouth to the American people. He said it publicly. He said it in testimony. He has made it clear that as a former Joint Chiefs of Staff serving underneath Donald Trump, that Donald Trump is not fit to be the president of the United States. And if that matters to anybody who actually calls himself an American, Fox News understands that they have to put Brett Baer out there to block that from entering, to block that thought and that idea from settling in the minds of their viewers. Here's what I want to say about Vice President Kamala Harris. God bless you, black woman, because you have a level of intensity and clarity that terrifies these MAGA men. All this morning, as I was sharing on Twitter how excited and how proud, if I could even say it that way, I am of Kamala Harris because of how she did in that interview and how she handled not only Donald Trump, but she handled Brett Baer. She handled Fox News. As I was saying that, a couple of key things stood out to me from the replies in my comment section. One, there were men who outright said that women should not speak to men in the way that Kamala Harris spoke to Brett Baer. We cannot exist on a planet where women have to be subjugated simply because men are afraid of what they have to say. We cannot exist in a system where leadership is predicated based on your gender. We cannot live in a system, and our system cannot survive if we continue to allow people to be in power simply because they are a man. And we refuse to allow women to be as wonderful of leaders as they are, as strong individuals, and the clarity with which they speak. Kamala Harris shows right here in this moment that very few men want to sit in a room and disagree with her. And this matters because when you are right, I don't care if you are a woman who is correct or a man who is correct or a gender nonconforming individual who is correct. Whoever is correct should stand behind what they're saying with the same intensity and ferocity as Kamala Harris did in this clip. And there are men trembling all over this country because they are terrified of the fact that there could be a woman in the most powerful position on the face of the planet who will not kowtow to a man simply because he's a man. And I'm sorry, MAGA, quote unquote, men. I'm sorry if you feel intimidated by a woman like that. I'm sorry if you don't feel like you can be in a room with a person like that. I'm sorry if that makes you afraid, but you would be a fool. You would be a fool to prefer someone who would know the truth and would timidly shy away from it just because you want to be able to speak over them. What kind of a person are you? What kind of intelligence do you really show when you are the type of person that would rather a woman not speak to you in this fashion than to hear the truth from that woman? This is the underlying problem with MAGA. They prefer the lies because the lies allow them to sustain a power structure in which they don't have to listen to women. They don't have to listen to minorities. They don't have to listen to the LGBTQIA community. They don't have to listen to black people. They don't have to listen to children. They don't have to listen to anyone that they don't want to hear the truth from. And so they will instead prefer to accept lies from a bumbling buffoon like Donald Trump. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show right after this.
The world going through it outside, they unruly, but I keep it cool, they can't press me. I keep it pure with intention. They see what I'm on, ain't no vixen. I might slide through with that top down. I keep it tuned with a high power. Put it on me, I'm blessed. Blessed, big bag, manifest the sky, no stress. Keep no evil around me, can't ground me. I built it since when I had less. No hex on God, can't pause. Look at how far we progress. Whatever we do.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
America is running out of time. We only have so many days left before this upcoming election, and Donald Trump has made it clear that he is committed to not only his ego, but committed to destroying democracy. We have an infrastructure that is MAGA, that is committed to not only propelling Donald Trump back into the White House, but ensuring that there can never again be a free and fair election in this country. Their job in this role of fascism is to ensure that they convince enough Americans that what they plan on doing to the rest of America is okay. This clip that I want you to watch and I want to dissect with you is of Jake Tapper of CNN, and he meticulously goes through all of the statements of Donald Trump just recently. These are recent statements from Donald Trump making it clear, America, that he has every intention of turning this country into a tool of retribution that he intends on using against people that he deems more dangerous than Russia. Take a listen in.
With just 22 days left until Election Day, former President Donald Trump is claiming that his political opponents are more dangerous than foreign adversaries of the United States.
It's the enemy from within, all the scum that we have to deal with that hate our country. That's a bigger enemy than China and Russia.
The quote, enemy from within, is a phrase that the former president repeated yesterday in an interview on Fox.
We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries.
Trump went on to suggest how he might handle these so-called enemies from within on Election Day should he win in November.
We have some sick people, radical left lunatics, and I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
Okay, let's pause it and begin our discussion here. This is Donald Trump admitting what former Defense Secretary Mark Esper said about Donald Trump during the 2020 George Floyd protest. He said that Donald Trump asked about using the military to shoot some of them in the leg. And we've seen that since 2020, his thinking and his disposition towards Americans that he disagrees with, leftists, right? He says radical leftists, is now to double down on this action. This is what he wants to do when he gets in power. Anyone who dares protest against dear leader Donald Trump could be faced with a Department of Defense that's not willing to disobey unlawful orders. More precisely, we could be facing in 2025 a Department of Defense, a military that is willing and able to execute Donald Trump's retribution on these radical leftists that he labels everyone as and says that we are all more dangerous than Russia. Donald Trump is telling you what the future is going to look like underneath his administration, and yet and still we have so many people who will not admit, and I think it's on purpose, they refuse to admit that Donald Trump has made statements that are very clear that he intends on changing this country from a democracy to some type of totalitarian state where he can use the military to squash anyone who dares protest against him. Let's keep listening in.
So who exactly are these enemies from within that Mr. Trump says he would consider deploying the military or the National Guard against? Someone that, as Trump suggests, poses a greater threat to national security than Russia or China. Who are they?
The thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Shifty Schiff.
Okay, U.S. Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, a Democrat from California, right in the area I am right now, Los Angeles, who is now running for a seat in the U.S. Senate. He was the lead prosecutor in Trump's first impeachment trial. So, as a factual matter, stripping this of all adjectives and any bias, the Republican nominee is telling you that as commander-in-chief, he will contemplate using the United States military or National Guard to go after his political opponents, including Democrats, such as the likely next U.S. Senator from California, Adam Schiff. That's what he's saying. And he is referring to his political opponents here in the United States, Americans, as the enemy, as scum, as a bigger and more dangerous enemy than China or Russia. These are his words. This is what he is telling you that he will do if you elect him president.
Now, I appreciate Jake Tapper getting here, and it has taken most of the American media infrastructure this long to actually get to this point of saying it very directly. If you take the words that come out of the mouth of Donald Trump, then you will see he has fascism as his intention, retribution as his mission statement, and he intends on using the military as his execution tool. And who is he going to target? Well, he's going to target people like you. He's going to target people like me. He's going to target people, anyone who disagrees with him, anyone who makes him upset. Matter of fact, it will go even further than that. It won't just be about Donald Trump's ego. It will be about the ego of Maga and all of the people in the infrastructure who may not like what you said to them online. I had someone jump into my stream the other day and say, Pastor Ben is spreading misinformation. He could go to jail soon. The information that I was sharing was direct factual information about Donald Trump and about the situation that we're facing in this country. But it doesn't matter whether or not what we say is truthful. As long as they don't like it, Donald Trump is creating the infrastructure to be able to penalize us. And that's exactly what he intends on doing. And he doesn't just plan on starting with people, low level people like me or you, like just regular people on the internet. He plans on starting with someone who could be a sitting senator. I mean, the gall, the audacity to be willing to take someone that you simply disagree with and use the more importantly than that, the audacity to think that your ego, Donald Trump, is worthy of transforming the United States of America from what it was into what you needed to be to satiate your ego. That's the unmitigated gall here. That's the audacity here. And that's what's so dangerous about Donald Trump, because he sees nothing wrong with it. In fact, he only sees it as proper. This is just the right thing to do for Donald Trump, a man who has lived his entire life and no one has ever told him no, a man who's lived his entire life and firmly believed that he has the right to ascend above everyone else. And it doesn't matter how many bodies he piles and stacks upon to get to that height. It doesn't matter how many people he has to kick off the ladder behind him. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that he gets to gratify and satiate his ego. And now he has a multi-billion-dollar Maga misinformation machine behind him. Folks, America is in danger, and these people mean business. I'm grateful that CNN, as well as other outlets, are finally catching up to what we've been screaming at the top of our lungs for years now. Fascism is at the door. They are barbarians at their own gates, and they have every intention of transforming this country into something more like Gilead from Handmaid's Tale than the democracy you grew up in.
And it's not just retribution against his political foes. Mr. Trump is also making comments that seem to be getting darker about migrants, immigrants, undocumented workers in this country, people who came across the country, across the border illegally. You'll remember in 2015 when Mr. Trump launched his presidential bid, and he said this about immigrants.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Today, gone is the acknowledgement that some are good people. Instead, Mr. Trump's closing campaign message sounds more like this.
We're like an occupied country. We got people taking over parts of Colorado. We have people taking over other states. A lot of states don't want to talk about it because they're embarrassed. The governor's embarrassed. The mayors are embarrassed. But it's no different, really, than if we lost a war.
He is referring to the United States as occupied, saying it's no different than if we had lost a war. As we reported on Friday, local police in Aurora, Colorado say they have encountered some gang activity tied to a Venezuelan group, but they say any claims that city buildings have been taken over, much less parts of Aurora, much less parts of Colorado, are simply not true. But not only is Mr. Trump disparaging all immigrants, some of whom have come over into this country legally with temporary protections, such as, for example, the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, whom he falsely accused of eating cats and dogs. Mr. Trump is also claiming that these migrants pose a direct threat to your family and to every family across the nation.
The children are in danger. They can't go to school with these people. These people are from a different planet.
Quote, these people are from a different planet, unquote, Mr. Trump said about children.
For this to work for Donald Trump, he is going to have to dehumanize. No, let me start over. For this to work not only for Donald Trump, but also all of the people in Maga that insist on mass deportations now, they have to dehumanize people to the point of no return, to the point where they can justify in their mind mass deportations, concentration camps, internment camps. They have to make everyone that they disagree with seem as though they are a violent threat to your personal safety. If you can stir the type of fear in people that makes them fear that you are going to commit an act of violence on them, then you are not only willing to turn a blind eye when something is being done to them, you're far more likely to participate in that atrocity. And this is the pattern behind every genocide. This is the pattern behind every ethnic cleansing. This is the pattern behind every atrocity in world history. They must absolutely dehumanize every part. Not even the children are human. Not even the children are worthwhile. This is what Donald Trump is saying of children. Let's be clear. When Donald Trump gets in power, the things we will see done in this country will pale in comparison to the things that we've already done in this country. It's not as though this country doesn't have a track record of doing the most horrific things to human beings. Ask the Native Americans, ask Black people. Donald Trump wants to do this again. And it's all for the sake of his ego, as well as the multi-billion-dollar Maga misinformation machine that has millions of people clawing, scratching for attention and clicks, for clout, for checks. All of these people are willing to go the distance for Donald Trump because now they have found a way to get notoriety and fame and to make money. And of course, some of them are just bigoted people who absolutely despise immigrants and absolutely despise you, the person who happens to disagree with them. That's all for today, folks. Listen, thank you so much for joining me. You got to come over to the YouTube channel. We're dropping content on a regular basis. I had a chance to sit and do a show with Clickbaity, Political Thirst Trap. Those guys are doing great. Dr. Carl Mack has been hanging out with me for a while. He's been away for the last week or so, but I have some new content from him. He's in the circle. He's family. Of course, we have Rebecca Azor and DJ Exclusive. They're still on the channel doing their thing every Saturday. I'm there with them on Saturday morning at around 10:30-ish, give or take. But definitely go over to youtube.com. I think it's / the BPD or the Benjamin Dixon Show. But look me up and you'll see all the work that we're doing over there. And I will do my best to keep this podcast coming on a regular basis. Thanks so much, everyone. I'll see you next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.